What happened when your mother-in-law tried to ruin your child's birthday party? I was staring at the 23 missed calls from my wife's mother when the first fire truck pulled into my driveway. The party had started exactly 18 minutes ago. My son Ethan had just blown out his candles, and now 3 uniformed firefighters were walking toward my backyard, where 48 kids and their parents were eating cake. The lead firefighter had this apologetic look on his face that told me everything I needed to know before he even opened his mouth. Someone had called in a gas leak at this exact address, claiming they could smell it from the street and heard children screaming inside. My hands started shaking as I pulled up the text I'd received from my mother-in-law Diane 30 minutes earlier, the one I'd ignored while setting up the bounce house. The message was simple, just 8 words that I'd dismissed as her usual drama. "You'll regret not listening to me, Michael." I'd laughed it off then, figured she was still angry about not being invited to help plan Ethan's 8th birthday party. I wasn't laughing anymore. The firefighter, Captain Reeves according to his badge, asked if we had natural gas service to the property. I told him no, we had electric everything, always had since we bought the house 4 years ago. He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer, and radioed his team to do a sweep anyway because protocol was protocol when children were involved. I watched parents start gathering their kids nervously, some already heading toward the front gate. Ethan's face crumpled as he watched his friends leaving, his new Iron Man action figure still unopened on the present table. My wife Lisa came running from the kitchen where she'd been refilling juice boxes, flour on her hands from the extra cupcakes she'd been decorating. She took one look at the fire trucks, then at me, then at her phone, where I knew she'd see the same barrage of missed calls from her mother. "She didn't," Lisa whispered, but we both knew she absolutely did. Captain Reeves finished his sweep in 20 minutes, found nothing wrong, and apologized for the disruption before explaining that false emergency calls were taken seriously and investigated. I gave him Diane's name and number without hesitation. I'd been married to Lisa for 9 years when her mother started showing her true colors, but the real trouble began about 14 months ago when we told Diane we were moving 3 hours away for my job promotion. Lisa worked remotely as a graphic designer, so the move made perfect sense for our family. Better schools, bigger house, actual backyard for Ethan instead of the cramped apartment we'd been renting near Diane's place. My mother-in-law acted supportive at first, helped us pack boxes, even cried at our goodbye dinner and promised to visit often. Then the phone calls started. Daily at first, multiple times a day, always with some emergency that required Lisa's immediate attention or advice. Her cable box wasn't working. She couldn't figure out her new prescription. She thought she heard a noise in the attic at 2 a.m., and could Lisa drive over to check? When Lisa gently reminded her we now lived 3 hours away, Diane would cry about being abandoned in her old age. She was 61 and in perfect health. She played tennis twice a week and volunteered at the library. But according to her, we'd sentenced her to a lonely death by moving away. The complaints escalated after Ethan started 2nd grade in our new town. Diane began calling him directly, something we'd initially encouraged to maintain their relationship. She'd ask him questions about his new school, his new friends, what mommy and daddy fought about, whether he missed his old room, if he was happy, or just pretending to be happy. Ethan started having nightmares about 3 months after we moved. He'd wake up crying, saying Grandma told him families who really loved each other stayed together, and moving away meant we didn't really love her anymore. Lisa confronted her mother after the 4th nightmare in a week. Diane denied everything, said Ethan must have misunderstood, accused Lisa of trying to turn her grandson against her. The pattern became clear after that conversation. Every time we set a boundary with Diane, something would happen. The week after Lisa told her mother she couldn't call Ethan's school to check on him, our car got keyed in the grocery store parking lot. After we said she needed to ask before buying Ethan expensive gifts, our credit card information got stolen and used to order $2,400 worth of electronics. We couldn't prove Diane was involved in either incident, but the timing felt too coincidental. Lisa wanted to believe her mother was just struggling with the distance, that given time she'd adjust and things would get better. I wanted to believe it too, because I loved my wife and didn't want to be the reason she lost her relationship with her mom. So we tried everything. We set up weekly video calls with Diane, sent her photos of Ethan constantly, invited her to visit for every holiday and school event. She came for Thanksgiving last year and spent the entire 4-day weekend criticizing our parenting choices. Ethan's bedtime was too early, we fed him too much sugar, we let him play too many video games, we didn't take him to church enough, his haircut made him look like a girl. By the time she left, Lisa was in tears, and Ethan was asking if Grandma was mad at him. I told Lisa we needed to reduce contact, maybe limit Diane's visits to shorter, supervised interactions. Lisa agreed reluctantly, and we sent her mother a carefully worded email explaining that while we loved her and wanted her in our lives, the constant criticism was affecting our family dynamics and Ethan's emotional well-being. If you are enjoying this story already, please subscribe to see more stories like this. Diane responded by calling Lisa's older brother, Kevin, who lived 2 states away and talked to their mother maybe twice a year. Suddenly, Kevin was texting Lisa daily with concerns about our parenting, asking if everything was okay at home, suggesting maybe Lisa was being manipulated or controlled. The implication was clear. Diane had painted me as some kind of abusive husband who'd isolated her daughter and brainwashed her grandson. Kevin eventually flew out to visit us unannounced, showed up on a Saturday morning clearly expecting to find evidence of whatever nightmare scenario Diane had described. Instead, he found us making pancakes, Ethan building Lego sets on the living room floor, Lisa working on a design project for a client. Kevin stayed for coffee, apologized for believing their mother's stories, and told Lisa he hadn't realized how bad Diane's manipulation had gotten. He flew home that afternoon and stopped responding to Diane's calls. That was 6 months ago, and Diane blamed us for turning her son against her too. The birthday party incident happened on a Sunday afternoon in late April. Ethan had been planning this party for 2 months, ever since we told him he could invite his entire second-grade class plus some kids from his soccer team. We'd rented a bounce house, hired a face painter, ordered a custom Iron Man cake from the bakery Ethan loved. Lisa spent a week making goodie bags filled with toys and candy. I'd set up a whole obstacle course in the backyard with stations for different superhero challenges. We'd deliberately not invited Diane because the last 3 family events she'd attended ended in drama, and we wanted Ethan to have one perfect day without his grandmother making everything about her feelings. We'd called her the week before to explain our decision gently, told her we'd send photos, and maybe she could take Ethan for ice cream the following weekend to celebrate just the 2 of them. She'd gone quiet on the phone, said she understood, told us she hoped we had a wonderful party. The calm acceptance should have been my first warning. The fire trucks left around 3 o'clock, and I managed to convince about half the parents to bring their kids back. The rest had already driven away, spooked by the emergency response or just ready to leave anyway. Ethan tried to put on a brave face, but I could see the disappointment in every forced smile. We did the obstacle course. The face painter finished up, kids jumped in the bounce house for another hour, but the energy was wrong, the magic broken. Parents kept giving us these sympathetic looks like we were victims of some neighborhood prank, which I guess we were. Around 4:30, Lisa's phone rang again. Diane's name lit up the screen. Lisa stepped into the garage to take the call, and I could hear her voice getting louder through the door, though I couldn't make out the words. She came back outside 10 minutes later with mascara running down her face and her hands balled into fists. She wanted to know how the party went, Lisa said, her voice shaking. She said she hoped the fire department didn't ruin things too badly, and then she laughed. She actually laughed, Michael. I told Lisa to go inside and take a breath while I finished with the last few families. By 5 o'clock, everyone had left except Ethan's best friend Oliver and his mom Cassidy, who'd stayed to help clean up without us even asking. Cassidy had witnessed the whole fire truck situation, heard the firefighter mention investigating the false call, and she had this concerned look that made me think she'd put the pieces together. I used to work in family law before I had kids, she said quietly while we were folding up tables. If your mother-in-law called in a false emergency report involving children, that's actually a crime. It's also potential evidence of harassment. You might want to document everything. She gave me the name of a lawyer she knew, someone who specialized in restraining orders and family court cases. I thanked her, filed the information away mentally, and focused on getting through the rest of the day. Ethan fell asleep that night still wearing his Iron Man birthday shirt, one hand clutching the action figure he'd barely had time to play with, and I promised myself this would be the last time Diane got to hurt my kid. Monday morning, I called the fire department and spoke with Captain Reeves directly. He told me they'd traced the call to a burner phone, likely purchased with cash specifically to avoid tracking, but the call had come from a cell tower about 2 miles from our house. The caller had been female, older sounding, and had given specific details about our address and the number of children present. Reeves explained that filing a false emergency report was a misdemeanor, potentially a felony depending on resources used and endangerment created. The case was being forwarded to the police department for investigation. He also mentioned, off the record, that the detail about children screaming was particularly malicious because it triggered the highest level emergency response. Whoever made that call knew exactly what they were doing, Reeves said. They wanted maximum disruption with plausible deniability. I asked if he could send me the incident report for my records. He said it would be ready by end of business day, and I could pick up a copy at the station. That afternoon, while Ethan was at school, I started building my case. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Diane Documentation and began compiling everything I could remember. Text messages going back 8 months where she'd made veiled threats or inappropriate comments. The email we'd sent about boundaries and her response accusing us of parental alienation. Screenshots of conversations where she'd pumped Ethan for information about our private life. I called Lisa's brother Kevin and asked if he'd be willing to write a statement about what Diane had told him, the lies she'd spread about our marriage. Kevin agreed immediately, said he'd been expecting this call for months and was surprised we'd waited this long. He emailed me a 3-page document that evening detailing every conversation he'd had with Diane where she'd badmouthed us, accused me of abuse, or claimed Lisa was being controlled. Your mother has been doing this kind of thing my whole life, Kevin wrote in his cover email. I'm sorry I didn't warn Lisa sooner. I thought distance would make it better. Clearly I was wrong. Tuesday morning, I took off work and drove to the police station to pick up the incident report and file my own report about the harassment pattern. The officer who took my statement was Detective Jules Armstrong, a woman in her mid-40s with kind eyes and 22 years of experience in domestic situations. I showed her everything I'd compiled: the texts, the emails, Kevin's statement, the timeline of escalating incidents. Armstrong listened carefully, took notes, asked specific questions about Diane's access to our home, our routines, our son's schedule. "Has she ever made threats against you or your wife directly?" Armstrong asked. I pulled up a text from 3 weeks ago where Diane had told Lisa, "You're going to regret keeping my grandson from me. I promise you that." Armstrong photographed the text with her phone. "I'm going to be honest with you, Mr. Donovan," she said, using my last name for the first time. "This pattern is concerning, but without direct evidence linking your mother-in-law to the false emergency call, it's hard to pursue criminal charges. The burner phone makes proving anything almost impossible. However, this documentation is excellent groundwork for a restraining order. Have you consulted with an attorney?" I mentioned Cassidy's recommendation, the family law specialist named Jennifer Park. Armstrong knew her, called her a shark in the best way possible, and suggested I get an appointment as soon as possible. She also flagged our address in the police system for increased patrol attention and gave me her direct number to call if anything else happened. "Document everything from here forward," Armstrong said. "Keep your phone charged, save every voicemail, screenshot every text, write down every incident with dates and times. If this escalates to stalking or direct threats, we can act faster with a solid paper trail. And Mr. Donovan, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, call us immediately. Don't wait to see if it gets worse." I left the police station feeling simultaneously validated and terrified. Someone in authority finally believed us, saw the pattern we'd been living with, but that also meant the situation was serious enough to require police intervention. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was something else entirely. I called Jennifer Park's office from my car and managed to get an emergency consultation scheduled for Thursday afternoon. Her paralegal, an efficient-sounding woman named Yolanda Cruz, asked me to email all my documentation before the meeting so Park could review it in advance. I sent everything that night: 37 pages of texts, 12 emails, Kevin's statement, the fire department incident report, Detective Armstrong's contact information, and a 10-page timeline I'd created detailing every concerning incident from the past 14 months. Wednesday passed without contact from Diane, which somehow felt more ominous than her usual barrage of calls and texts. Lisa was on edge, jumping every time her phone buzzed, checking the doorbell camera compulsively. Ethan noticed the tension and started acting out at school, something his teacher mentioned in an email that evening. "Ethan seems distracted and anxious," Mrs. Alvarez wrote. "He mentioned his grandmother was mad at him for having a birthday party. I'm concerned about what might be happening at home." I forwarded the email to Jennifer Park with a note explaining that Diane's harassment was now affecting Ethan's schoolwork and mental state. Park responded within an hour. "This strengthens our case considerably. Family court judges take children's well-being very seriously. See you tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thursday afternoon, Lisa and I sat in Jennifer Park's office on the 14th floor of a downtown building, looking out over the city while she reviewed our documentation on her computer. Park was younger than I expected, maybe mid-30s, with sharp features and the kind of intensity that made you believe she could win any argument. She'd already spent 2 hours reviewing our case before we arrived, and she didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Your mother-in-law is escalating," Park said bluntly. "The birthday party incident represents a significant shift in her behavior. She's moved from emotional manipulation and boundary violations to actively sabotaging your family events and potentially endangering your child. The fire department response could have ended badly in multiple ways. A child could have panicked and been injured in the evacuation. The disruption caused emotional harm to your son, and the resource waste put actual emergencies at risk." Park pulled up a document on her screen and turned the monitor toward us. "I'm recommending we file for an emergency protective order with the family court, not a criminal restraining order. Here's why. Family court orders can include provisions specifically protecting Ethan, including no contact at school, no phone calls, no gifts, no third-party contact through relatives. Criminal restraining orders are harder to get without direct threats or violence, but family court judges have broader discretion when a child's well-being is at stake." She walked us through the process. We'd file tomorrow morning, get a temporary order within 24 hours, then have a full hearing within 3 weeks where Diane could contest the order. "She will contest it," Park said with certainty. "Based on your documentation, your mother-in-law believes she's the victim here. She'll claim parental alienation, argue she's being unfairly kept from her grandson, probably accuse you of manipulation or abuse. We need to be prepared for her to fight dirty." Lisa started crying then, not dramatically, just quiet tears running down her face. "I never thought my own mother would do something like this," she said. "I keep thinking maybe we're overreacting. Maybe she just misses us and doesn't know how to express it." Park handed Lisa a tissue box without sympathy or judgment. "Mrs. Donovan, I've been practicing family law for 12 years. I've seen this pattern dozens of times, controlling parents who can't accept their adult children's independence. What starts as guilt trips and boundary violations can escalate to stalking, property damage, parental kidnapping, or false CPS reports. The birthday party incident is a warning sign. Your mother demonstrated she's willing to use emergency services as weapons and doesn't care about the consequences for Ethan. That's not love. That's control. Park's words hit Lisa like cold water, and I watched something shift in her expression. The doubt I'd seen there for months, the hope that her mother would somehow become reasonable, finally disappeared. Okay, Lisa said, sitting up straighter. What do we need to do? We spent the next hour signing paperwork and planning strategy. Park would file for the emergency protective order Friday morning, citing the harassment pattern, the false emergency call, and Ethan's declining mental health. We'd include statements from Kevin, Detective Armstrong's incident report, and documentation from Ethan's teacher. Park warned us to expect retaliation once Diane was served with the order. She'll likely try to contact you directly, maybe show up at your house or Ethan's school. Do not engage. Do not respond to texts or calls. If she shows up in person, call the police immediately and get video if possible. Every violation of the order strengthens our case for making it permanent. Park also suggested we inform Ethan's school about the situation and provide them with a copy of the protective order once it was issued. Schools deal with custody and family conflict constantly. They'll know how to handle it if she tries to pick him up or visit. We left Park's office feeling like we'd finally taken control of the situation, like we'd stopped being reactive and started being strategic. That feeling lasted exactly 14 hours. If this story keeps your interest, please subscribe to get more stories like this. Friday morning at 6:23 a.m., our doorbell started ringing continuously, someone pressing it over and over in rapid succession. I checked the camera feed from my phone and saw Diane standing on our front porch, hair disheveled, still wearing pajama pants and a sweatshirt. She was yelling something I couldn't make out through the door. Lisa grabbed my arm, her fingernails digging into my skin. "Don't go out there," she said. "Please, Michael, just call the police." I was already dialing, giving our address to the dispatcher, explaining that my mother-in-law was at our home creating a disturbance, and we had requested no contact. The dispatcher asked if we felt threatened. I looked at the camera feed again, watched Diane pound on the door with both fists, and said yes. She told me to stay inside, keep the doors locked, and officers were en route. The doorbell ringing stopped abruptly. Through the camera, I watched Diane step back from the door, pull out her phone, and start recording a video of our house. She was talking to the camera, her mouth moving rapidly, her free hand gesturing at our windows. The police arrived 6 minutes later, 2 officers in separate patrol cars. I recognized one of them from my meeting with Detective Armstrong. Officer Raymond Vasquez approached Diane calmly, while his partner, a woman whose badge read Daniels, came to our door. I opened it carefully, staying inside like the dispatcher had instructed. "Mr. Donovan?" Officer Daniels asked. I nodded. "Detective Armstrong briefed us on your situation yesterday. We're going to need you to stay inside while Officer Vasquez speaks with your mother-in-law. Can you tell me what happened this morning?" I walked her through the timeline, waking up to the doorbell, checking the camera, seeing Diane, calling 911. Daniels took notes on a tablet, asked if we had the protective order yet. I explained we were filing today, but it hadn't been issued yet. She nodded, said the timing was unfortunate, but the harassment report from earlier in the week was still active. Through the open door, I could hear Diane's voice getting louder. She was telling Vasquez that we'd kidnapped her grandson, that she hadn't seen him in months, that she was a victim of parental alienation and needed to check on his welfare. Vasquez remained calm, professional. "Ma'am, you need to leave this property immediately. The homeowners have requested no contact. You're currently trespassing." Diane's voice went shrill. "This is my daughter's house. I have every right to see my family." Vasquez pulled out his citation book. "This is your final warning. Leave now, or I'll arrest you for criminal trespass and disturbing the peace." I watched Diane's face go through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Rage, disbelief, fear, calculation, and finally, forced calm. "I'm leaving," she said, holding up her hands in mock surrender. "But you're all going to regret keeping a grandmother from her grandson. I have lawyers too. I have rights." She walked to her car, a silver Lexus SUV that must have been parked around the corner because I hadn't seen it in the camera feed earlier. Before getting in, she turned back toward our house and yelled loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear. "Lisa, you're going to lose him. I promise you that." Then she drove away, tires squealing slightly as she turned the corner. Officer Vasquez came to our door while Daniels called in the incident report. "That was recorded on our body cameras," Vasquez said. "The threat at the end is particularly helpful for your protective order case. I'm going to write this up as attempted criminal trespass with harassment enhancement. It won't result in charges without the protective order in place, but it's more documentation. Detective Armstrong will get a copy of my report by this afternoon." He handed me his card. "Mr. Donovan, I want you to understand something. Your mother-in-law is escalating rapidly. The visit at 6 in the morning, the threats about taking your son, the mention of lawyers. She's building towards something. Maybe a custody action, maybe a CPS report, maybe just a complete breakdown. Stay vigilant, keep documenting, and get that protective order filed today." Lisa had been standing behind me the whole time, silent. After the officers left, she went straight to the bathroom and threw up. I heard her through the door, sobbing between retches. When she finally came out, her face was blotchy, and her hands were shaking. We need to get Ethan out of school today, she said. If she went to our house at 6 a.m., she might try the school next. I called the school office immediately, explained we had a family emergency and needed to pick Ethan up early. Mrs. Alvarez came to the phone, concerned. Is everything all right, Mr. Donovan? I made a split-second decision to trust her. My mother-in-law has been harassing our family, and we're in the process of getting a protective order. She showed up at our house this morning and made threats. I'm worried she might try to contact Ethan at school. Mrs. Alvarez's voice went from concerned to commanding in one breath. Bring me a copy of the protective order the moment you have it. Until then, I'm putting a note in Ethan's file that only you and Mrs. Donovan are authorized for pickup. I'll inform the front office, the playground supervisors, and the after-school program director. If anyone matching your mother-in-law's description appears on campus, security will be notified immediately. I could have kissed her through the phone. Instead, I just thanked her profusely and promised to keep her updated. Lisa and I drove straight to Jennifer Park's office, arriving without an appointment and probably looking like disaster victims. Yolanda Cruz took one look at our faces and immediately went to get Park from another meeting. Park listened to our account of the morning, took possession of the video files from our doorbell camera, and told us she was filing the emergency protective order within the hour. The early morning visit and the threat about taking Ethan escalates this from harassment to potential kidnapping risk, Park said, typing rapidly on her computer. I'm adding provisions for no contact at school, no contact through third parties, and no proximity within 500 feet of your home, workplace, or Ethan's school. The threat she made on camera about you're going to lose him is explicitly threatening custody interference. Park filed the petition electronically at 11:47 a.m. By 4:30 p.m., a family court judge named Patricia Monroe had reviewed the filing and issued a temporary protective order valid for 21 days, until the full hearing. The order was comprehensive. Diane was prohibited from contacting any of us directly or indirectly, from coming within 500 feet of our home or Ethan's school, from making any social media posts about us, and from filing any legal actions regarding custody or visitation without going through the court first. The order would be served by a process server the following morning. That night, Lisa and I sat Ethan down and had the conversation we'd been dreading. We told him that Grandma Diane had been making some bad choices lately, that she'd broken some important rules about respecting our family's privacy and safety, and that a judge had decided she needed to stay away from us for a while so everyone could calm down. Ethan, who was 8 and smart and had already noticed his grandmother's strange behavior, asked the question we'd been expecting. Is it because of my birthday party? Because the fire trucks came? I pulled him onto my lap, something he usually said he was too old for but allowed in this moment. No, buddy, none of this is your fault. Grandma made choices that affected you, but you didn't do anything wrong. Adults sometimes have problems that kids can't fix, and this is one of those times. Ethan thought about this, then asked, Is Grandma going to jail? Lisa took that one. No, sweetie. She's just not allowed to visit us or call us for a while. If she follows the rules, everything will be okay. If she doesn't follow the rules, then there might be consequences. Ethan nodded slowly, accepting this explanation the way kids do when they trust their parents to handle the adult problems. Can I still keep the Iron Man figure she gave me for Christmas? He asked. I looked at Lisa, and she nodded. Of course, buddy. That's yours. Saturday morning started quietly, too quietly. I kept checking my phone, expecting some explosion from Diane after she was served with the protective order. Lisa was wound so tight I could practically hear her vibrating with tension. We'd decided to spend the day at home, not taking any chances on Diane showing up at a park or restaurant. Around 11 a.m., my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Donovan, this is Monica Reeves from Child Protective Services. I need to speak with you about a report we received concerning your son, Ethan Donovan. My stomach dropped through the floor. A report about what? I managed to keep my voice steady, but Lisa had noticed my expression and was already pulling out her phone to text Jennifer Park. We received an anonymous call yesterday evening claiming that Ethan is being emotionally abused and denied contact with his grandmother. The caller described concerning incidents of your son being kept isolated and punished for wanting to see his extended family. I need to schedule a home visit to investigate these claims. It's just standard procedure. I closed my eyes, took a breath, and made a choice. Ms. Reeves, before we schedule anything, I need to tell you something. We filed for a protective order yesterday against my mother-in-law, Diane Calloway, which was granted by a family court judge. She was served with that order this morning. I believe she's the one who made this anonymous report in retaliation. I have documentation of a 14-month harassment pattern, including a false emergency call she made last weekend to the fire department claiming a gas leak at our son's birthday party. There was a pause on the line, the sound of computer keys clicking. I see a note in your file about a police report for harassment, Reeves said slowly. And I see the protective order was entered into the system this morning. Mr. Donovan, I appreciate your transparency. However, I'm still legally obligated to investigate any report involving child welfare. Can you and your wife meet with me Monday afternoon? I'd like to conduct a brief home visit and speak with Ethan, just to close the case properly. I agreed to Monday at 2 p.m., ended the call, and immediately called Jennifer Park's emergency line. She answered on the second ring. Let me guess, Park said. CPS call? I confirmed, gave her Reeves's name and the scheduled appointment time. This is textbook retaliation, Park said. Diane was served this morning, so she immediately filed a false CPS report to cause you maximum stress and inconvenience. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to meet with Reeves, show her the same documentation you showed me, explain the harassment pattern, and be completely cooperative. Reeves will see through the false report immediately. The only question is whether she'll pursue charges against Diane for filing a knowingly false report. Park paused, then added, I'm going to call Reeves Monday morning before your appointment and provide her with copies of our court filings and the protective order. It helps to give CPS workers context before they walk into a situation. This also gives us another violation to present at the full hearing in 3 weeks. Monday afternoon, Monica Reeves arrived at our house exactly on time. A woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too many actual abuse cases to be fooled by false reports. I'd cleaned the house obsessively all morning, made sure Ethan's room was neat, put out fresh flowers like we were staging an open house. Reeves smiled slightly when she saw my obvious preparation. Mr. Donovan, I spoke with your attorney this morning. I've reviewed the protective order and the documentation she provided. I still need to do my due diligence, but I want you to know I understand the context here. She spent 30 minutes walking through our home, checking that Ethan had his own bed, adequate clothing, food in the refrigerator, a safe environment. Then she sat with Ethan in the living room while Lisa and I waited in the kitchen, and I resisted the urge to press my ear against the door. When Reeves emerged 20 minutes later, Ethan was smiling and chattering about the new obstacle course we'd built in the backyard to replace the birthday party one that got interrupted. Reeves asked if she could see it, and we all trooped outside. Ethan demonstrated every station, explaining the superhero theme, showing off his completion time. Reeves took notes on her tablet, asked Ethan a few questions about school and friends, observed his body language and demeanor. Finally, she thanked Ethan for showing her around and asked if she could speak with Lisa and me privately. We went back inside while Ethan played outside. Mr. and Mrs. Donovan, Reeves said, settling into our living room chair. I'm closing this case as unfounded. Ethan is clearly happy, healthy, well-adjusted, and living in a safe, loving environment. There is no evidence of emotional abuse, isolation, or any form of maltreatment. I'm also noting in my report that this appears to be a retaliatory false report filed by a family member who is the subject of a protective order. That information will be forwarded to the district attorney's office for possible prosecution. Lisa started crying again, but this time from relief. Thank you, she managed. Thank you for actually looking at the situation instead of just believing whatever my mother said. Reeves's expression softened. Mrs. Donovan, I've been doing this job for 26 years. I know the difference between a genuine concern and a weaponized report. Your mother-in-law made specific claims that were easily disproven within 5 minutes of arriving here. Ethan is articulate, affectionate with both of you, shows no signs of fear or anxiety in your presence, and spontaneously talked about positive interactions with extended family members. That's not the profile of an abused or isolated child. She stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing. I'm recommending to your attorney that you request a psychological evaluation as part of the protective order hearing. Your mother-in-law's pattern of behavior, the escalating harassment, the false emergency call, the retaliatory CPS report, suggests someone who's lost touch with appropriate boundaries. A court-ordered evaluation might reveal underlying issues that need treatment. After Reeves left, Lisa and I just held each other in the living room for a long time, not talking, just breathing. Ethan came in from the backyard and asked if everything was okay. Everything's fine, buddy, I told him. The nice lady was just making sure you're happy and safe, and you are. Ethan considered this, then went back to playing. That evening, I sent Jennifer Park a detailed account of the CPS visit and Reeves's conclusions. Park responded with satisfaction. Perfect. This actually strengthens our case considerably. Diane has now committed 3 documented retaliatory actions in 1 week. The early morning house visit, the threats on camera, and the false CPS report. The pattern is unmistakable. I'm requesting the psychological evaluation Reeves suggested, and I'm also filing a motion to make the temporary protective order permanent without waiting for the full hearing. Judge Monroe takes false CPS reports very seriously. The next 2 weeks were strange in their calmness. No calls from Diane, no surprise visits, no anonymous reports or emergencies. It felt like waiting for a bomb to go off, knowing it was armed and ready, but not knowing when. Lisa stopped sleeping well, waking up multiple times a night to check the doorbell camera. Ethan started having nightmares again, dreams where his grandmother was taking him away, and we couldn't stop her. His teacher reported increased anxiety at school, trouble focusing, asking repeatedly if his parents were coming to pick him up. I took him to see Dr. Miriam Greenberg, a child psychologist who specialized in family conflict and anxiety. Dr. Greenberg was in her early 60s with warm brown eyes and an office full of toys and art supplies. She met with Ethan 3 times over 2 weeks, using play therapy and drawing exercises to help him process his fears. After the 3rd session, Dr. Greenberg asked to meet with Lisa and me privately. Ethan is experiencing significant anxiety related to his grandmother's behavior, she explained, showing us drawings Ethan had made during their sessions. In one picture, a stick figure labeled Grandma was much larger than the stick figures labeled Mom, Dad, and Me, looming over them with angry scribbles for a mouth. In another, Ethan had drawn himself hiding inside a house, while a figure stood outside with what looked like fire coming from her hands. These images indicate Ethan perceives his grandmother as threatening and unpredictable. He's also showing signs of hypervigilance, constantly watching for danger, difficulty relaxing, trouble sleeping. This is consistent with a child who's been exposed to ongoing family conflict and intimidation. Dr. Greenberg typed notes into her computer. I'm writing a report for your attorney recommending that contact with the grandmother be suspended until Ethan's anxiety symptoms resolve and until the grandmother completes psychological treatment addressing her behavior patterns. I'm also recommending continued therapy for Ethan to build coping skills and process his experiences. The full protective order hearing was scheduled for a Wednesday morning, 3 weeks and 2 days after we'd filed the emergency order. Jennifer Park met us outside the courtroom at 8:45 a.m., looking sharp in a gray suit and carrying a leather folder thick with documentation. Diane's attorney is Gerald Hoffman, Park said. He's old school, likes to paint grandmothers as victims and adult children as ungrateful. Don't be surprised if he tries to make this about your parenting choices or Lisa's relationship with her mother. Stay calm, stick to facts, and let me handle the legal arguments. We entered the courtroom at 9 a.m. Diane was already there with Hoffman, a man in his late 60s with silver hair and an expensive suit. Diane had dressed for sympathy. Modest dress, minimal makeup, tissues clutched in one hand. She wouldn't look at Lisa, kept her eyes focused straight ahead, like she was the injured party here. Judge Patricia Monroe took the bench at 9:15 a.m., a no-nonsense woman in her mid-50s who'd been a family court judge for 18 years according to the bio Park had shown me. Monroe reviewed the case file briefly, then looked up. This is a hearing to determine whether to make permanent the temporary protective order issued 3 weeks ago, protecting Michael Donovan, Lisa Donovan, and their minor son, Ethan Donovan, from contact with Diane Calloway. Ms. Park, you're representing the petitioners? Park stood. Yes, Your Honor. We're requesting the protective order be made permanent for a period of 3 years, with provisions prohibiting all contact, requiring the respondent to complete psychological evaluation and treatment, and establishing clear consequences for violations. Judge Monroe nodded. Mr. Hoffman, you're representing Ms. Calloway? Hoffman stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Yes, Your Honor. We're requesting the temporary order be dissolved entirely. Ms. Calloway has been improperly and cruelly cut off from her only grandchild based on misunderstandings and exaggerations. She poses no threat to anyone. Judge Monroe looked back at her file. I've reviewed the documentation submitted by both parties. Ms. Park, I'm particularly concerned about the false emergency call to the fire department, the 6 a.m. visit to the petitioner's home, and the CPS report. Can you establish that Ms. Calloway was responsible for these incidents? Park opened her folder. Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to enter into evidence the fire department incident report, police body camera footage from the home visit, and the CPS investigator's report concluding the claim was unfounded and retaliatory. I also have the burner phone purchase receipt from a store 2 blocks from Ms. Calloway's residence, purchased 3 hours before the false emergency call, paid for with cash but showing Ms. Calloway's vehicle in the parking lot security footage. Hoffman stood quickly. Objection, Your Honor. There's no definitive proof my client purchased that phone or made that call. Judge Monroe held up her hand. I'll allow the evidence and weigh it accordingly. Continue, Ms. Park. Park spent the next 40 minutes laying out our case like she was arguing before the Supreme Court. She presented text messages, emails, witness statements from Kevin and Detective Armstrong, the doorbell camera footage of Diane's threatening behavior, Ethan's drawings from therapy, Dr. Greenberg's professional recommendation, and Monica Reeves's report about the false CPS claim. She established pattern and escalation, demonstrated Diane's willingness to weaponize emergency services and child protective systems, and painted a picture of a woman who'd lost all sense of appropriate boundaries in her desperation to maintain control. When Park finally sat down, Judge Monroe was making extensive notes. Hoffman's turn came, and he tried every tactic Park had warned us about. He characterized Diane as a devoted grandmother being punished for expressing concern about her grandchild's well-being. He suggested Lisa was being manipulated by a controlling husband who wanted to isolate her from her family. He implied we were being vindictive and punishing Diane for past disagreements rather than responding to genuine threats. Judge Monroe let Hoffman speak for about 20 minutes before interrupting. Mr. Hoffman, does your client deny making the 6 a.m. visit to the petitioner's home? Hoffman hesitated. She went to check on her daughter, Your Honor. She was concerned. Does she deny yelling, "You're going to lose him," as she left the property? Judge Monroe's voice was sharp. Hoffman shifted uncomfortably. That was taken out of context, Your Honor. She was emotional. Does she deny filing the CPS report the same day she was served with the protective order? Silence from Hoffman. Judge Monroe looked directly at Diane. Ms. Calloway, I'm going to give you an opportunity to address the court directly. Do you understand that filing false reports with emergency services and child protective services is a crime? Diane stood up, ignoring Hoffman's attempt to stop her. Your Honor, I love my grandson. I was just trying to protect him. My daughter has changed since she married him. She pointed at me. And I'm afraid for Ethan's safety. I had to do something. Judge Monroe's expression went cold. Ms. Calloway, you've just admitted in open court to filing what the CPS investigator determined was an unfounded and retaliatory report. You've also demonstrated exactly the kind of concerning judgment that led to this protective order being filed in the first place. Monroe looked back at her notes. I've presided over family court for 18 years. I've seen grandparents genuinely concerned about their grandchildren's welfare, and I've seen grandparents who weaponize the legal system to punish their adult children for establishing independence. Based on the evidence presented today, particularly the false emergency call that endangered 48 children, the threatening behavior captured on video, and the false CPS report filed in clear retaliation for a legal court order, I'm finding that Ms. Calloway poses a credible threat to the petitioner's safety and well-being. Monroe signed a document on her bench. The protective order is made permanent for a period of 5 years. Ms. Calloway is prohibited from all contact with the petitioners, direct or indirect. She is ordered to complete a psychological evaluation within 60 days and provide the results to this court. Any violation of this order will result in immediate arrest and criminal charges. Diane made a sound like she'd been punched, a gasp that turned into a sob. Hoffman started to argue, but Judge Monroe cut him off. Mr. Hoffman, I'm also referring this matter to the district attorney for possible prosecution on the false emergency call and the false CPS report. Ms. Calloway's admission in court today will be included in that referral. We're adjourned. The gavel came down, and just like that, it was over. Lisa collapsed against me, shaking. Park gathered her documents calmly, like she'd expected this exact outcome. Behind us, I heard Diane crying, Hoffman trying to console her or maybe just trying to get her out of the courtroom before she said anything else incriminating. We walked out into the hallway, and Lisa finally let herself fully break down. It's over, she kept saying. It's really over. Park shook our hands, promised to send us the final paperwork, and suggested we take the rest of the day to process everything. You did the right thing, she told Lisa. I know it doesn't feel like winning when it's your own mother, but you protected your son. That's what matters. The district attorney did end up filing charges against Diane for filing a false emergency report and making a false report to CPS. She pleaded guilty to both misdemeanors 6 months later as part of a plea deal, received 2 years probation and 200 hours community service, and had to pay restitution to the fire department for the resources used in responding to her fake call. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court revealed narcissistic personality traits and an inability to respect boundaries, along with severe anxiety about abandonment. The psychologist recommended long-term therapy, which Diane began attending to comply with her probation terms. We never found out if it helped because we maintained zero contact, as required by the protective order and as necessary for our own healing. Ethan's anxiety slowly improved over the following year, with continued therapy from Dr. Greenberg. The nightmares faded, his focus at school returned, and he stopped asking worried questions about whether his grandmother would take him away. On his 9th birthday, we threw another party with the same guest list, the same bounce house, the same face painter. No fire trucks showed up. No drama erupted. Ethan moonwalked his way through the afternoon, opened presents with real joy, and fell asleep that night with a genuine smile. Lisa found me that evening sitting on the back porch, looking at the obstacle course we'd rebuilt for the party. You saved us, she said, sitting down next to me. You saw the pattern before I did, and you saved us. I pulled her close, thinking about how close we'd come to normalizing Diane's behavior, to accepting the harassment as just family drama, to letting her poison our lives indefinitely. We saved ourselves, I told Lisa. We chose Ethan over guilt. We chose safety over family obligation. That's all. The protective order stays in effect until Ethan turns 13. By then, he'll be old enough to decide for himself if he wants any relationship with his grandmother, assuming she's gotten help and made real changes. But we're not holding our breath, and we're not waiting around for her redemption arc. We've built a life without her chaos, found peace without her manipulation, and discovered that family isn't defined by blood, but by who shows up with love instead of conditions. Diane wanted to ruin one birthday party and ended up losing 5 years of her grandson's life. Sometimes the only way to protect the people you love is to cut out the ones who hurt them, even when they're supposed to be family, especially when they're supposed to be family. If you made it this far, hit like. You've earned it.